But
Yeah,
yeah,
so I was saying to Alex, it's nice to be able to geek out about vocals with someone, especially someone that can sort of help me put it into the technical terms, like
yeah.
as opposed to my weird ways of explaining it, because I'm normally around people that just talk about guitars and drums, and I never really get to geek out about vocals.
What's up, everybody? Mark with Kardavox Academy here, and today we're doing yet another co-reaction, and I'm excited about this one because, as a lot of you are aware, being a metalhead, first-time reactions on this channel are kind of rare. Unless it's a brand new song, you can basically be 100% sure I've heard it before, because growing up, when I did, if I was to tell you, like, I've never heard Tool or System of a Down, that would be a lie, and you would know it, but today we're going to be checking out Bleed From Within. We're going to be hearing Levitate, and I'm really excited about that. And I'm also very excited because during the last video that I did of Bleed From Within, Stand Down, I was like, man, it'd be really cool if we had Scott on the channel. It'd be really cool to talk about these things. And sure enough, we have him here today. And before we bring him on, I want to tell you a little bit about the channel if you're new here. So my name is Mark. I'm a metal vocalist myself in a band called Kardashev. I'm also a vocal coach specializing in teaching people how to make all these crazy, gritty, gurgly noises. I know a lot, but I don't know everything. So it's always fun to have these vocalists here on the channel for me to sort of poke and prod at their brains. If you like the content, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. It means a lot to me to watch the channel grow. We also have a Discord where we do all sorts of cool stuff. We have listening parties every Friday night, hosted by my dear old business partner, Alex, who actually won't be there tonight, but that's okay. It's going to be me. I'm going to run it. I'm going to run it into the ground. And we have karaoke events. It's a lot of fun. So with that being said, I think we're good to go. Let's go ahead and let's welcome Scott Kennedy to the channel. Here we go. All right, now after that very obvious harsh cut, so I could turn the video on. Scott, what's going on? How you doing today, man?
Yo, how's it going? Thank you for having me, by the way.
Yeah, dude, it's going great. It's going great. Yeah, very excited because, you know, like I said in the Stand Down video, Bleed From Within is a band that I've definitely heard a lot, but never like dug into, especially like since you know, starting these videos. And when I heard your voice, I was like, okay, there are some things that I want to ask about. There's some questions that I'd have. But first, I know you did Knotfest recently. How did that go?
It was awesome. Like, such a cool experience. Slipknot, Corey Taylor, he's one of the reasons I am a vocalist. He's one of the reasons I'm even in a band. If it wasn't for that guy, I wouldn't even be sitting here talking to you, because he is like genuinely like just one of the best in my opinion. He's inspired me from such a young age. So yeah, as you can imagine, it was just a life-changing experience and one I'll never forget. And yeah, Corey Taylor watching us from side stage was a very daunting experience, but we got through it. We got through it.
Oh, dude, I would be so nervous. I would be incredibly nervous. Corey Taylor, because like you said, Corey Taylor is huge. For me, we were talking about this like literally right before we started recording. But for me, like if Travis Ryan was somehow aware of me as a vocalist at all, much less like watching me perform, I'd probably just like lay down and cry a little bit and just be like, I can't, I'll never be on your level, man. I can't do it. Cool. But I'm glad to hear that was a good experience. I'm glad to hear that was fun. So yeah. let's talk a little bit about this song that we're going to be listening to. I'm excited to check it out. It's you know, pretty beefy in length, at least for reaction videos. So I think we'll probably have a lot to go in about. But this is actually one that you suggested. And I'm kind of interested. It was between this one and another one. And this one is the one that had the music. Yeah, Sovereign. This one had the music video. So I'm interested. Yeah. Why is this one one of the songs that you were like, hey, if I come on the channel, I want to do this?
I think it was like, it's probably the most, I hate using this word, but the most commercial song we've ever done. Like, I really tried to push myself, especially in the chorus. It's like one of the cleanest, most commercial sounding choruses we've ever done. I hate using that word because
sure.
I'm still that young kid that's like, we are a metal band. So I just hate using that word. But yeah, I don't know. It's like it seems to be like the most popular song from the album. It's like the one single that's probably done the best in terms of like streaming numbers, etc. So yeah, I just thought maybe that kind of picked it because I thought maybe that would be the one anyone that likes my band would maybe want to hear. So I based it on that.
That's a good reason. That's perfect. And
Yeah.
I appreciate you giving me that context, because now I'm going to kind of listen to this and be like, okay, I'm going to like listen to those commercial elements. I know what you mean, by the way. I know what you mean, because like there is a place where you like write a song to be a little bit more digestible so that it pulls people into the rest of the album. We've totally done that. I get it. So cool. I'll be listening to it from that perspective. As far as like the concept of the song, do you want me to kind of go in blind, or do you want to give me any background on like what it's about, different types of sounds that I'll hear? If it helps you make your decision, literally every guest I've ever had on the channel, they're just like, nah, screw you, go in blind. You could be the combo breaker. You could be. So yeah, do you want to give me any context, or what do you think?
It's see, to be honest, it's like, it's a very, this doesn't mean I don't want to talk about it. It's a very personal song to me. It's probably like the most like meaningful song lyrically to me on this album. It's about my basically 2018, my grandmother passed away, and she died like basically like 6 months before she died. She really struggled with dementia, and that woman was genuinely like my best friend in this whole world. Like, that woman just was my entire world, and just seeing her go through these changes and like start to forget who I was and stuff. And me, it's about me let me just say, from an uneducated perspective, it's just about me trying to figure it out and understand how to, like, like if someone's going through that, you don't really know how to speak to them. It's like, I did a lot of like reading up on it and stuff, and it's just basically about me trying to like navigate through that and understand what was going on and how I could slow down the process. And she was obviously I spent every single day with her leading up to that, and the day she died, I was actually on tour, so I didn't see her for 2 weeks. And it's kind of just about that whole situation. So it's quite a sad song, but it's also quite uplifting in the chorus, and it's talking about just how I dealt with that, and hopefully someone else that's maybe going through that can learn something. Not that I have anything to teach anyone, but just, like just me trying to play my part, and if anyone can take anything from it, then that's why we write songs, isn't it?
That's it's interesting. It's interesting because I feel like all of us, like, I'm not exactly, and I don't know exactly how old you are, but like we're in the same like age group. We're all getting to the point where we and the people that we are friends with are starting to see the people that raised us and the people that we grew up with, start to enter those last chapters of their life. And so I think songs like that are really valuable, especially for like the people more immediately in our lives. Cause I've had that experience before, and it's tough to go through. So I'll keep that in mind as well. I appreciate you sharing that, by the way.
No, of course. I mean, the thing with me, I like to write. I don't want to sing a song that I don't feel. I don't want to be like performing a song live and fake it. So that I always try to write from a really personal, like, level.
Sure. Well, I'm pretty sure that's going to translate in the song here.
I hope so.
I've never heard your music and thought like it was unemotional. So, you know what I mean? So let's go ahead and let's check it out. I appreciate you're the first person to give me context. So you are officially the combo breaker. Amazing. But let's go ahead. Let's check out Levitate by Bleed From Within. Here we go. All right, I hear a chorus, so that's a good time for me to pause. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So there are already like a bunch of things that I hear and that I want to talk about. First thing, so I always kind of get the instrumentals out of the way first because I don't know shit about playing guitar. I don't know shit about that, but I always like to point out compositional elements that I really like. I feel like a lot of songs, they either immediately hit and go hard, like just boom right into it, or they have like these long drawn out ambient intros, which I'm totally not guilty of ever. Long drawn out ambient intros that then get to the buildup. But I feel like you all started in the buildup, and that was really cool. And that's a hard thing to do. We've tried to do that a couple times and not released those versions. You know what I mean? Like you had like the violin, the strings coming in. So like from the very beginning, we heard vocals. We heard like very quick like strings building anticipation. That's a really cool touch.
Yeah.
And then like, damn, like if like bouncy like slap for lack of a better term, slappy riffs like are just something y'all do so well. I absolutely love that. I can't comment on it past that because again I don't play guitar, but like just kudos to well all of you for the first minute being like really intriguing and really engaging compositionally.
That's the one thing I'm like, sometimes I just feel I forget like how lucky I am sometimes to play in a band with such great players, and on top of that such great writers. They're always like Stephen and I'll say Gunzi, his name's Craig, but everyone calls him Gunzi. But most of the time when I'm talking to people that we don't know, they go, Gunzi? Anyway, yeah, no, but like sometimes they're just so creative with like the way they the way they put riffs together and like the compositions. They're just so creative sometimes, and I'm always like so excited whenever they send new stuff. Like,
yeah. Oh, I can totally relate to that. And so this is, before we talk technique, this brings up a really good question. And this is something I'm always interested in. You know, y'all's writing process, like, do you wait till pretty much everything is done and then you come through and you put like, you listen to basically what's the final song and then put vocals on it? Or are you kind of more interwoven in the process and riffs might be written around vocal patterns that you want to do versus the song guiding what your voice does? What's that writing process look like for you?
Most of the time I wait till the song's done. Like, I'm very impatient though, so quite a lot of the time, like Gunzi will send a riff, and I'm like, oh, I want to start writing over that straight away. And sometimes, like, you know, like some of the best songs have just come to you like instantly. And there is a few songs in the album where I've like literally written it so fast because the idea just comes to you. Mm-hmm. Sometimes as well, the lyrics can just come with the song, and then you need to like follow that. Like, just if these words come to you and you just start singing a pattern, you just need to follow that and try and create a theme for a song around what you've just randomly sang in your head or freestyled, because sometimes that makes for the best songs. You know, the stuff that just comes like that. Sometimes the stuff that takes a while, tricky, but it depends. Most of the time I will wait till the song's completely finished because I like to try and imagine the whole thing. The whole song as a whole. I'll map out what I want to do and come up with rhythms. Quite some of the times as well, like if I'm listening to a riff and I'll like almost like drum on the table what I'm going to do with the vocal pattern. So I'll like create a new rhythm on top of the music using my fingers as drums, and then I'll like record that in a voice note on my phone, me just tapping the table, and then I'll like listen back to that and fit words to that rhythm, and then sometimes I do that as well. Like I'll basically clutch at any straws I can to make sure it's good.
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good idea. You know what I normally do? Oh god, it would be so embarrassing if they got out. I'll record little videos on my phone, and I don't, maybe I don't know what I'm going to say yet, or I don't know exactly what kind of vocal it'll be, but I know the pattern, like you're talking about. Like I'll be like, talking. I'll be like, this is the pattern that I want to do in this part, and if like they sound so dumb, but that's usually the way that I get my way around that. So yeah, maybe I'll just record the taps, like be a little less cringy to myself. So let's talk vocal technique, because I think that like you're certainly doing a vocal style that is big, that is belted, that is projected. And I have heard, since Stand Down, I went and I kind of dug into your music, a little bit more because I was like, oh, there's a lot of interesting stuff vocally going on here. And there are moments where I hear what sound like very like fry heavy screams, and moments where I hear what sound like very false chord heavy screams. And I'm not sure like how comfortable you are with like those terminologies and anatomies and things like that. So, kind of barring that, I always like to ask you, like, when you scream, this is usually the best way. When you scream, like, what does it feel like? Like, where do you feel the grit rolling around? And by the way, some people, they're like, man, like, listen, I don't know. And that's totally an acceptable answer because I didn't know for the longest time too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm in that group of people. Like, basically, we've been a band now for 17 years, and I've sort of figured out a technique that works for me, and I can basically go between my range safely. But the technicalities of it, I have no idea. That's why I was quite excited to do this, because I feel like it could be quite educational for me as well to basically.
Sure.
I mean, I've got ways of explaining things that probably won't make sense to you on how I do it, but I think this will be quite educational for me as well. So I was excited to do this.
Yeah, hell
but
yeah.
In terms of how it depends where I am in my range. Like I think my three main ones are like low, mid, and high, which I'm sure is the same as every other metal vocalist. For my low vocal, I guess it's more like sort of below my jaw. Everything, pretty much everything is controlled from my diaphragm.
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
I tense that up, and then I basically just control my airways, like or the shape of my mouth to basically go between my range and dynamic and whatever. But yeah, my mid range, I guess I feel like it just sort of like, yeah! So that just feels like it's sort of sitting like right on my nose. It's coming from like the back of my head right through my nose almost.
Yeah.
And then my high scream almost feels like it's sort of just running round like up my throat and round the roof of my mouth, like sort of like that, I guess. Sure. I know that probably sounds really stupid, but
I like in my lessons I have to decode all sorts of crazy descriptions. And that actually, what you're describing actually seems is very straightforward and very, very clear, right? That mid that you did, pardon me, that mid that you did, I mean, that's a very solid, that is a very balanced false chord like belt. Basically, it's like a gritty shout that you over these 17 years have really balanced out and really worked out pretty well. When you're doing that mid, and I appreciate you letting me dig at your vocals a little bit. When you're doing that mid, hell yeah, I appreciate that you're here for it.
That's what I'm here for.
Hell yeah. Also, for anybody watching, sorry for the coughing and the throat clearing. I'm having some trouble with some medication that has a side effect of a dry cough. So I'm trying to keep that for anybody who's watching. They're like, what's going on? That's it. But with that mid-tone that you're doing, where do you feel, and this is kind of hard for some people to kind of separate, where do you feel the distortion? Because a lot of the descriptions that you gave me are kind of how you feel like your voice is moving, right? The direction that your voice is going. But then there's also like the actual gritty feeling, the actual feeling of tissues slapping around. Where would you say that you feel that? Would you say that you feel it down here in the throat? Hopefully not. More so like behind or back around the tongue? What would you say?
I guess like almost like behind my tonsils. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
No, that's where I feel like a vibrating. Like, yeah, maybe there.
Yeah.
So that's definitely more down like here. Yeah, so it almost just feels like it's coming from here and then just moving up. Yeah. Into my nasal passage almost.
Yeah. One thing that you're telling me and that you're doing really, really well is that you're, basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from what you're telling me, it sounds like you're driving with your abdominal muscles, right? Utilizing that diaphragmatic breathing to support the voice up and outward, utilizing your mouth a lot to control the shape of the sound, but keeping your throat as a fairly neutral tube just for sound to move through. Would you say that your throat usually feels pretty neutral, or would you say like, nah, it really tenses up a lot?
No, it feels pretty neutral. Like my whole body, like basically, like, see, way back in the day, I used to definitely, and it was not screaming right. I couldn't go between my low, mid, and high in the one breath. Basically, I
Oh
was
yeah.
all tensed up, and it was obviously not good for me. So I basically tried to change my technique, and I control everything. Like, see, as long as my diaphragm's tight,
Hmm.
I could wail about all I want, and the vocal wouldn't change as long as the diaphragm's like, as long as I'm tensing at the core.
Yeah.
I can be as loose as possible, and I don't think the vocal sound. I don't know, but I don't think the vocal sound would change.
Yeah, I mean, probably not. I mean, well, I mean, if you were to like bend, like to lean over or to like, do the vocalist foot on the box, like, type of thing, it
Yeah,
may like change the way that it's being projected or things like that, but probably not because as we as vocalists develop and become, you know, stronger, yes, but better at isolating the different parts of our body that we're going to be using to create these sounds, we learn to like
yep,
absorb the shock of movement and things like that. And one, for anybody wondering, one really good way that you can practice moving around a little bit more while activating your breath support is to not actually use a scream, but to just project a note. So you can, I'm not going to obviously just like run and jump around here, but you can just like breathe in, hit any note you want. Hey, make sure that you're engaging that support, and then like walk around, hold that note, and do some dishes, do some
yeah.
squats, whatever you want to do. Kind of get comfortable being mobile. So it's really interesting, and it makes sense with the way y'all perform. I caught a couple live videos as well in preparation for this. We'll talk about your highs and your lows maybe a little bit later when we hit an example. But anything else you want to mention about the way that your vocals feel? Because the way that you're describing them, the lows feeling down in your throat might be something worth looking at,
Yep.
but the way that you're describing them mostly sounds pretty good and pretty healthy. Anything else you want to add before we keep going?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the lows being something worth looking at, you think it can be damaging?
So I'm not the kind of person who likes to immediately say, anytime someone describes a sensation, immediately say unhealthy, healthy. And the reason I don't generally
Yeah,
do
yeah,
that is because we all relate to our bodies very, very differently.
yep.
So for example, I've had vocalists tell me before that they create their distortion in their chest, right? Which is impossible. There's nothing in your chest that can actually create distortion. So what they're actually feeling is the resonance, right?
The rumble.
The rumble. So, I mean,
Yeah,
you and I would have to dig into it. But the first thing, like if we were talking about it, the first thing I would do is I would, sit with you and I would dissect what is it you're actually feeling there. A good analogy for this is like, let's say, well, you've been to plenty of shows, way more than I have. And the drummer is like setting up, they're doing sound check and he's testing the triggers and the PA and everything. And you hear that like, doo, doo, doo. You might, if you're standing in the crowd, standing out there to see how it sounds, you'll feel vibration in your chest.
in the chest. Yeah,
But we know that the sound wasn't created in the chest. So a good example of this, now you and I do vocals very differently, but conceptually and fundamentally it's the same, right? If I do like one of my more low tones, what I can feel is I can feel like vibration in my chest and throat just from sound, from air. But the actual
maybe
feeling
that's
of
what I'm feeling.
yeah, it probably is, honestly, just from the way that it sounded. But if I zero in on the feeling of the actual grit, the actual scratchiness, because screams have a scratchy feeling to them. They just kind of do. Fry screams, like really pure fry screams, sometimes not so much. But that I feel it's actually pretty gentle, despite the way that guttural sounds. It's actually a really gentle. It's like, pop rocks with like, all the high end taken off. So it's just like warm and rumbly, like little pop rocks or little like marbles rolling around behind my tongue. That's more of what it feels like. So that's what I would do. I think it would be too quick for me to just be like, hey, guy who's been doing vocals for 17 years with really no issues, because you said one thing, you're unhealthy in your technique. That would be a little silly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've obviously I blew my voice out before, like, but it was on the last. It's something I've rarely had issues with. It's the only time I blew my voice out was when I had a chest infection and I had a really bad cough.
Yeah.
And that basically just made my scream really dry, which sounded awful. But I think if it wasn't for that cough, I probably would not have lost my voice.
Yeah, probably not. I feel like I remember reading or hearing something about that. But yeah, and like that's also a very like a very human part of the experience. Like, sometimes people are surprised to hear that I've blown out my voice before. And that's actually part of what made me really passionate about trying to learn to do this the right way. For me, it was something less cool. I was just new to the band and I wanted to impress the guys, so, because
we've all been there, man.
Yeah. I was like, okay, these guys have already been in bands and this is my first band. I got to be really cool. And then like 3 songs in, I was like, guys, I got to sit out. And the bassist was like, I don't know about this, dude. But thankfully they gave me another shot. Let's keep going though. I'm really digging the way the song's going. I'm actually going to go back just a little bit so we can kind of get that transition into the chorus. Also, the vibe of this video, I love the color scheme. Like we've got dark blacks, dark gray, and then the orange there. It's just really, really nice.
It's basically the color scheme of the new album.
Oh, hell yeah. There you go. Perfect. All right, we're gonna talk about that chorus. I know we only listened to a little bit. We're gonna talk about it. So, I totally hear what you're saying about the chorus having a little bit more of like a. I also hate the word commercial because I don't think commercial applies to this, but I know what you're trying to say. Yeah. I generally like to use the term accessible, right? And I want to talk about why I say that. I don't say that because it sounds like pop or it sounds generic, although I love pop music. So like when sometimes people insult music by saying people will be like, oh, it's just pop. I'm like, yo, I might like it then. It doesn't sound like any of that. When I hear that, I think to myself, that is a chorus that is very easy for a fan to learn, for a fan to sing along with. And then like, at Knotfest or at a show, people could like, throw their fists up in the air and sing along. And I think that I think that sometimes oftentimes it's not musicians, it's fans of music. They will like dislike that sort of thing because they think it's too, I don't know, they think weird things. But I loved that. Like I could listen to this song like 2 more times and then, be in my car and be like, bah, 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 right along with you. So I love that. Anything compositionally you want to talk about before I ask you about some vocal stuff?
The thing is, like, see, when we were talking, like, going back to the whole accessible commercial thing, like, we sort of came from our first 2 albums were more sort of deathcore, if you will, but without trying to sound like that, because, like, back then our influences were bands like Lamb of God, like, groove metal stuff is where we sort of came from.
Yeah.
And as I got a bit older and the more albums we were writing, the band never ever had a discussion to let's be more commercial. It was more about me wanting to experiment in my voice, experiment with writing hooks like that. Like it was more about that as opposed to the band being like, let's be more commercial. Because at the end of the day, we're a metal band and we always will be. But if we can have a hooky sing along chorus, why the hell not?
Yeah. I'm totally with you on that. Like, if it works in the song, and here it clearly does, because it moves out of and back into those like slappy, bouncy riffs so well.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit about your pitch in there, right? Because from what I'm hearing, it sounds very relaxed, very clean, and when I say clean, I mean clean in technique. Obviously, there was some grit on there. Very relaxed, very clean, very open. Was that kind of like singing with grit and singing with that projected belted gritty tone? Was that something that was kind of difficult for you to find, or was it something that came pretty naturally the moment you started screaming? Boom. Because for most people in I listen, I don't do a whole lot of gritty singing myself. Our music just doesn't really warrant it. But that's something I even really had to work into over time. What was that experience like for you?
It's definitely something like the whole melody thing. Or pitch vocals is something I've been sort of working on over the last 3 albums. And I've gradually like starting to grasp it a bit more as we've got to the last album, Shrine. But there's like a few different versions of it in there. Obviously you can hear from listening to that there's a lot of layers. There's like our guitarist Steven doing just full clean layers, him doing like harmonies. There's like me doing a more sort of yelly singy with a slight bit of distortion on it.
Yeah.
And then there's me doing like a proper, like, full on, like, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Hidden in there as well, just to give it some beef. But
Yeah.
that was obviously like totally not warmed up enough to do that there. But you get the idea. You get the idea.
Yeah. When you went for it, I was just like, okay, shit, here we go. Damn. All right.
And then, but when I'm doing it live, obviously I'm way more warmed up, and like I'm definitely holding back in the distortion a lot. And then that high note, the around my head, that note, I'm pulling the distortion right back completely on that. I'm pretty much just clean singing that note because I can't get up that high and add distortion.
Yeah. So you answered one of my questions, which was is it all you or just or layers of the bandmates? So that kind of answers that.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that's interesting, when you did that distortion here, I heard a little bit of this sound in it, right? Like I'm not gonna mimic what you were doing, but I heard a little bit of like this type of distortion in it. I heard a little bit of that going on. That could be what could be, again, you got to dig into this stuff, but it could be why it's difficult for you to carry your distortion up higher, because when I make that sound, basically that distortion is coming from structures, a mix of structures in my throat, supraglottal tissues. The main ones are the arytenoid cartilages, and sometimes the epiglottis as well. The epiglottis is like this trap door that when you swallow, it covers the entryway to your airway so you don't choke. And then the arytenoids, they move as the vocal folds open and close, they move as well. And they can close over the airway as well. And that's one of the main ways that like me and a lot of people, not just me, but a lot of people do like their low vocals, like those like those types of sounds. Now, if I try to pull that scream high, right? I'm not gonna do any singing because my voice is definitely hoarse from all the coughing, but if I try to pull that high, listen to what happens. Listen to what happens. It everything smush. I hit like a whistle there by accident, right? Anybody watching, if you're trying to hit whistle, that's not the right way to do it. That was a happy coincidence. Don't do it that way. But do you hear how everything's sort of like smushed up against itself? Yeah.
That's why I like that voice that I did there would pretty much, I'm pretty sure, is only on the like the album version. When I'm singing that live, it's like it almost feels like it's more in my higher register as opposed to, because that what I did there, like that feels like it's more in my sort of mid to low register. It feels like. But when I would do it live, I'm definitely pulling back the distortion. It's coming from a more, almost feels like it's more of a high scream.
Sure.
With the pitch on it.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I'm warmed up enough to try it, but
well, you have to.
But there, whereas there's a version now, it's more. You see? Do you hear the difference there?
So would be. I'll be able to hear it in the final video. It's blowing out through Zoom, unfortunately.
Right, shit. Well, that would be more like what I would do on. That would be more what I would do live, but for the sake of the record, I just wanted to fill as many gaps as possible, because it's kind of the way I look at vocals. I almost imagine the sound of my voice like a saw blade, right? This is going to sound really insane.
Go for it,
like a saw blade, and there's loads of gaps in between the noise. But it's so small that, like when I hear myself scream, it sounds like, but sped up. Does that make any sense at all?
It totally makes sense. It 100% makes sense. A lot of the way.
When I do, like, take for example, when I do a high scream, I hear that a lot more. But like, take for example, Howard Jones's high scream. It is just, it's like butter. It's like, it's almost like there's none of those gaps in throughout it.
Yeah.
And when I layer my vocals, I feel like it fills in some of those gaps.
Yeah, entirely correct. So one of the things with that you're hearing is just different types of distortion moving at different rates. Like, so for example, this is genuinely a bit of an oversimplification, but one of the ways for you and for anybody watching that when I listen to a vocal, I discern whether or not something is more of a fry scream or more of a false chord scream. Now, It's not always as simple as this because a lot of people are mixing sounds and putting sounds together. And then you have other bands where it's like, undeniably false chord like Black Tongue, and undeniably a fry scream like Fit for a King, or other things like that. Just watch a bunch of his songs have false chord that I haven't heard. But I'm listening to that rate of distortion, right? And a good example of this is throat singing, right? So if I do like that Kargria, I'm sure you've heard of it. You can hear that saw blade, right? It's like my voice is going on underneath it, but there's bup, 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 and if I transition that into just like an old school false chord growl, you can kind of hear those little clicks and those little pops. Whereas with a fry scream, it's going to sound a lot more like TV staticky. It's going to sound a lot more like than right. Again, sometimes people mix things, and it's not always as binary as that. But that's generally the main thing that I listen for. And then if I need to dig around a little bit past that, I do. And yeah, I hear that. I hear that in your vocals. Go ahead. That
leads me to think maybe my style of vocals is false chord then.
Yeah, I think that you're like very in moments like with a lot of vocals, and a lot of people have kind of noticed I do this. I'll say things like false chord forward or fry forward, because like with a lot of vocalists, there are multiple types of distortion that they'll dip into. And so if I say like, oh, he's a false chord vocalist, well, he does fry sometimes as well, or fry sometimes will be introduced or added to the sound. But I will say that the majority of your voice that I hear is very false chord driven for sure. And it's that relaxed, kind of flappy, channeled sound, that grunty that we add on top of belts or anything like that. Yeah, so I would agree with you there.
Yep. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
So is fry screaming more like the sort of like throaty, like that type of thing?
Yeah, that's generally
like a Liam from Cancer Bats, for example.
I'm drawing a blank on his sound right now, but yeah, essentially like that sound that you made, that's much more of a fry sound there. And it's less and that's coming from actually like bringing the vocal folds together and getting like a healthy creaking sound from that engagement. Right, okay. They generally don't require a whole lot of pressure either. That's usually when people like, you'll see people like learn fry screams by going like and then like squeezing like they're picking up something heavy, and it works, but it's a little risky because that introduces something called subglottal pressure, which can be one of the main driving forces in a lot of different types of vocal fatigue and vocal damage and things like that. But yeah, that like more poppy like sound, that's more of a fry scream. So with your false chords, it's open and relaxed and all the soft tissues are flapping. With a fry, you're still going to get some of that flap from your soft tissues, but the vocal folds are together and they're creating that like sound.
Right. So back in the day, if you were to like listen to an album Uprising or even earlier, for example, I never used to be able to go between my low scream and my high scream in the one breath. Mm-hmm. And I'm now thinking that the old way I used to high scream was more of a fry scream.
Could be.
Because I found it hard to go, because basically it used to sound like it was two different people, like I would just do like a and then they would never be like they would never like connect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's hard to do. Like that's a very skillful thing, connecting a false chord to a fry sound. And usually, the way that I would guide people through that is like, don't worry about it at first. Keep them separate and then do them side by side and slowly sort of bring them together. And generally, the way that you're gonna really stitch together most vocal things that you do is through relaxation, right? A lot of people will try to like grab and wrangle the animal that is their voice, but I kind of like to describe it like this. Like for anybody out there who has dogs or cats, like let's say you want them to like move from one room to another. The best way is going to be very gentle and calm and be like, hey, come here, buddy. Or if it's a cat, you're going to have a treat because they don't come when you call them. You know what I mean? But like, hey, come here, buddy. If you grab the collar and drag, they're going to dig their feet into the ground and they ain't going to move. And you'll have to use like a lot of muscle and brute force, and they're going to scratch up your wood floors, and it's just a mess, right? So usually it's going to be through relaxation and optimizing the shape of your vocal tract, the shape of your mouth. Like, if you need a more like a frontal tone, a more nasal tone to open up space in the pharynx, your tongue can be up and sort of like up against the teeth. hey, that opens up a lot of space as long as you're not squeezing here in the back of the mouth. And so that's things like that are really the way that you would start thinking about relaxing through those and sort of like, Zen. That's a pun. Zen is screaming. Like doing like a little Zen motion through there. But that's generally the way that you would want to go. And you probably, if you ever wanted to bring those fry screams back with your years of experience, you probably could think about stitching those two together. Or like, you already sound awesome. So if you're like, nah, screw that, I wouldn't blame you.
I feel like I've sort of figured out how to get up to that high and make it sound quite similar by using the same part of my voice that I do lows and mids, and it's helped. It's allowed me to like have a lot more dynamic in my vocals. Like I like to just use highs for like accents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like for example, if I'm doing like I'm trying to think of an example here. So like there's coming up in this song, there's a section that goes in the second verse right after this chorus. It goes, follow the bird into the eye of the bird. You know what I mean? It's like words like words like and suit beat going up high, and you understand where I'm coming from.
I totally know what you mean.
I just like to use. I mostly try to stay in my sort of mid range and use my low and high just for accents. If a word suits that shape, go for it. And then that helps give me a lot more dynamic through my lines.
Mm-hmm. And I think, obviously, I haven't heard this song, but I think that, for the style, for that like sort of bouncy rhythmic metal that y'all do, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that that's a good way to approach it. Cause like if you were doing like, Dickie Allen stuff, like it would sound awesome. But with this music, it'd be like, that's a little funky. You know what I mean? Like that's a little weird.
Like our old stuff was definitely a lot more like death metal inspired and sort of suited that, like Black Dahlia, like Trevor Sturnad, for example, was a massive influence for me. Like fucking rest in peace. Loved that guy so much, man. He actually gave Bleed From Within. He was that band were one of the first people that gave Bleed From Within a chance. Like
really,
we were supporting them, and we were like, before we only played maybe like 3 shows, just small local shows. We got to support the Black Dahlia Murder, and basically every time they came back to Glasgow, they asked for us to support them, and that was like 2006 or something. Yeah, total legends, man. Like, and that guy was just such a massive, massive inspiration for me, and like that's where my sort of highs and lows came from. But as the band has sort of progressed and matured their sound,
right,
it just almost my voice just didn't suit the sound. So that's why I sort of started transitioning my voice more into my mid range and just using my high and low for accents, because it is more of a sort of traditional metal sound we have these days, and I feel like that just suits the music a lot more to do it that way.
Yeah, it makes sense. I totally agree. Well, let's kind of listen for that and then talk about it. Yeah, God, this music video looks so cool. Every time I pause it, like sometimes you pause a music video and you catch somebody looking a little silly. Every time I pause it so far, it's like you could make like it's a perfect screenshot. All right, here we go. Oh yeah. It's actually a good place to talk because you pulled to that like really high like different voicing. So before we talk about that, I actually want to ask you, like the type of vocal that you do, it's what's the word? I'm just blanking on how to speak English. What the hell? It's very powerful, it's very strong, and it's very straightforward, right? Mm-hmm. That being said, these false chord sounds that have, our true voice mixed in them can be very taxing, especially when done improperly. Even when done properly, they can be taxing if we haven't warmed up properly. So what, you've mentioned warming up a couple times. What does your warm-up routine look like? Like, what are some of the things that you do? And is it different for if you're just going to practice versus be in the studio versus play live? What sort of things do you do when you warm up?
I pretty much follow the same like formula every time. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but I've went through so many different warm-up routines, basically just trial and error till I found something that worked for me. And one of the best things I found was I don't know if you've seen it on YouTube, the Melissa Cross Matt Tuck warm up.
I saw her Zen of Screaming DVDs 1 and 2 way back in the day, but I haven't seen that one. No.
Yeah. It's really good, man. It works for me. It's like got loads of like weird like sounds, and I feel like it must just warm up the part of my throat that I use, because like ever since I've done that, I've just always felt so much more comfortable and relaxed on stage.
Yeah.
There's like face stretches, tongue stretches, and then basically from there, I'll always start though from just doing like a low like like a sort of vibrating like hum, and then I'll gradually get louder. Like I'll do the warm ups, and then I'll kind of like do my scream like really held but stripped back with distortion, and then I'll slowly start to introduce distortion and volume before I go on stage. And then I basically just do loads of breathing exercises before every show as well, which really helps me like, you know, get more out of a verse, for example, before I have to breathe.
Well, that sounds very thorough. That sounds very good to me. I'd be really interested, if you feel up to it, hearing that step where you slowly add distortion, because I think one of the best ways to learn about screams is to hear them pulled back, to hear them sort of moved down in volume and intensity, but still being that scream. So I'd love to hear that you do that if you feel up to it.
Course.
Hell yeah. Thanks, dude.
So basically it starts from sort of what I was showing you earlier, like and then I'll start to like naturally, as soon as I start to add volume, the distortion just starts to come like so.
Yeah.
So and then from there I'll work up into
yeah.
I mean, I definitely drag it out longer than that. That was basically me just trying to do it all in the one breath there to show you. So if it sounded sort of forced at any point, that's why. But I'll tend to like do it in stages. So start like That's probably sounds louder than it actually is, but I do have quite a loud scream, I think. But,
sure. Yeah. That's interesting. So it sounds kind of like, and unfortunately Zoom is being a little bit of a butt right now, and it's kind of like
maybe I'm too close to the microphone.
Yeah, maybe. I think we could try farther back next time.
Want me to try farther back?
Yeah.
So I'll start from it.
Oh yeah,
is that better?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of how I do it.
From what I hear, you're using throat singing. You might have it slightly differently placed than I do. Right, and I usually use that because most of the screams I do are very voiceless, and that's just a stylistic choice and kind of just how I started. So that's just what I do. And I'll usually use that to transition out of my voice. So it's interesting that you're using that to transition into more of a belted scream. That's really cool, actually. That's really fascinating. But yeah, that warm-up routine sounds pretty thorough to me. Now I want to talk about that kind of higher scream that like you used to accentuate. Sounds very relaxed, and I could even see like in the music video. I don't know if you were like lip syncing or which. If you were, by the way,
definitely I was 100% lip syncing, man. There was no volume coming out of that mouth whatsoever.
No, so most of the music videos I've been in, I lip sync all the screams because I am so comfortable and used to them. I can make my mouth shape proper, and then any clean singing I do, I'll actually do that. So because people are gonna know, like, if your vowel is hey, but your mouth is going people are gonna be like, nah, wait a fucking minute. But it's lots of people do lip sync. It's totally fine. But I can even see you did what looks like the proper mouth shape, or I should say the mouth shape that fits. You got kind of, maybe we'll go back and watch it again, but you got kind of like a smile. A little bit of that going on, a little bit of brightness. So it was really cool. When you do shift, go ahead.
I feel like it is the shape of my mouth and my jaw that does like help me go from like lows to high. I feel it is a lot of it is the shape of the mouth.
Yeah. So embouchure, that shape of the mouth, that is okay. Whenever I say things this cut and dry, I'm always like, well, except for this. But in my opinion, that's one of the best ways, if not the best way, to like really move your scream around without putting, or I should say, before you put the work on the actual distortion. Like the lows that I do are just mids with a different mouth shape. Like if I take like a guttural and I just open it up, I'm not changing the scream at all. I'm just going, and so doing that, it's so often. Sometimes I'll have students. I mean, it doesn't always work this fast. A lot of times people have to work hard and it takes time. But every once in a while, a student will be like, "Man, I just can't do mids," and I'll just be like, "Oh, well, you're trying to do your mids like this. Just go like this." And then they do it and they're like, whoa, you know, sometimes that is so simple. I want to go back and listen to that again because I kind of want people to see it. I think that was it. Right? I think that was it right there.
I realized as well that bit I was talking about when I went high on the I, it's not as high on the album as I thought it was. It's because I do that live. But
really?
on the actual album, because the song was so new at the time, sometimes you miss these wee ideas. Like so many times after I record an album, I'll be listening back to it like 6 months after it's been released, and I'll be like, "Why the hell did I not do that, man?"
Oh, dude, I know.
And then I'll always just put it in live.
Yeah. Oh, so, that I've had that experience all the time. Except since we don't really play live, I just have to be like, well, goodbye. You know what I mean?
That's what I would.
I know what you mean. All right, yeah, let's check this out. Yeah. No. Yeah, let's talk a little. Oh, that was sick. So actually, mostly there, I just have compositional things to point out, and then a more like a lyrical question to ask. But that was awesome. I love that was. I'm sure it was intentional. I'm sure it was intentional because this whole song is very very expertly written. But like those more legato runs from the guitar solo going into like the staccato chugs, and then we get like all those bends. So we get like all these different shapes that the guitars are playing. Super sick. Loved that. That was so cool. I feel like a lot of times when people write music, and listen, I'm not trying to say like Kardashev hasn't made any compositional snafus because we certainly have, but sometimes I think when I listen to music, I feel like it's just a lot of sections put together. Just like this section and then this section and then this section, and there's like no cohesion. But with this, again, I can't really speak about it more intelligently. But with this, the different, like the sort of buffet of like different ways that you can approach the guitars was really cool. So yeah, super super sick. I wanted to ask you about the title, and now like we see the imagery of levitating, and again, you only have to go into it as much as you want to, which is none at all if that's how you feel. But like the title plus the subject matter, and now we see the imagery, like this is clearly something that, like, the title is clearly something very hinging. So how does that kind of relate to the context of the song, if you feel open to talking about it?
So the chorus lyrics, they were the first lyrics I wrote about, obviously, the situation that we discussed. The lyrics are, I wrap my head around this to know that you exist, which is basically me trying to understand that whole situation, to know that that person is still in there. And it's me trying to pull that person out of this darkness. So that's where the whole letter, so then the line is, we levitate to find bliss outside of this abyss, which is basically me trying to pull her out of that situation and like sort of levitate out of this abyss that is going on in here that I obviously can't understand.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like a kind of a metaphor, really, obviously, for what I'm talking about. And I think number one most important thing is that it's a badass song name. Before like when writing songs, number one is the song name has to be badass before you start thinking about the meaning. And I just really like that song name, Levitate, and I thought it was quite fitting for the sound of the song and obviously for the message. And yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I do agree. It's a pretty solid song title for sure. And man, like I know that feeling. I totally know that feeling of seeing somebody who's I was gonna say older, but sometimes dementia sets in really early. But seeing somebody whose mind is unfortunately something they're losing control over, and you know that there's like a piece of them and wanting to pull them out. That's really like I know I've never thought of it that way, but like wanting to separate that person from what they're going through, and you can't. That's rough, but you're telling the story well, and clearly for me and for other people, it's important to know. It's important to know that happens, and there are other people that deal with it. So, and I like that. I like songs that I don't know, like sometimes I'll listen to a song and the lyrics are all just like, from the pits of hell I have spawned to take over, and I'm like that's cool. Like fantasy novels are great, but I really like songs
I'm into that stuff, but
yeah.
I'm into that stuff too. But I prefer to write from a more personal level. Sometimes in some of the songs that are a bit heavier, my words do get quite dark at times. But this song being again the more accessible song, then it sort of lended itself to these style of lyrics.
Totally, most definitely
this message.
And I like that. I like songs that seek to kind of do something. Although, again, I will always humble myself and never try to set myself on a pedestal, because we totally have a couple songs there where it's like there was a space station and aliens were angry. Like we've done it. Like so.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool. All right, let's go ahead. I want to hear this transition, and then we might finish the song out. And then just kind of see what we want to talk about after that. Let's go right here. Cool. See, like sounds everywhere good. I click is a freaking screenshot, bro. It's crazy.
Dude, a funny story about this. So this is basically me lying on a drum stool.
Oh, really?
Yep. It's me lying on a drum stool, basically just pretending that my arms are sort of floating. Yeah. And then we had to like mask the drum stool out.
Yeah.
And then basically just keyframe the position of me moving up so it looks like I'm levitating. So a lot of work went into that scene right there. If you actually look close enough, you could probably see like where I've been masked out, like some of the like around my jeans and stuff. It's a bit messy when you see it full screen like this paused. But yeah, a lot of work. We
go ahead.
3 of us in the band are content creators. We make music videos and stuff. I mean, this was shot by our videographer Tom. But our guitar player Gunzi, he helped out a lot in this one, because we do, like, as I say, we do content creators, so we basically do a lot of our own video work and especially social media content. We're a very DIY band. I don't know why I'm getting onto that, but so if you look close enough, it's just a funny story of how that came about in the video.
Well, I mean, to my untrained eye, it looks very convincing. I mean, you even got like the softened edges of the light sort of like coming coming across you, right? So I mean, to me, I'm looking for like, you don't have to point it out, but I'm looking for like a bad job of masking, because I mean, obviously I don't have nearly as much experience as you, but I've done a lot of stuff in After Effects, and I'm like, man, maybe I suck at After Effects, because I don't see any issues here at all.
I'm not taking away from them. They've done a great job. It's just like, yeah.
For
You
sure.
get what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying. All right, cool. Let's check it out. Hell yeah. I love, ending. It's interesting that so like it started with that like strong sense of anticipation and ended, but it didn't feel like anticipation the second time around, of course, because it's at the end. I don't know, I sound like an idiot, but my point is I thought it sounded cool. Well, that was awesome. I mean, let's see how long have we been talking here? I don't even really know. It has been, we're in an hour and 4 minutes. That's a pretty chunky video. I feel like we got into a lot of stuff. I kind of can't think of anything else I want to ask or dig into, at least right now. But anything else you'd like to add about the song, about your vocal technique, anything like that at all?
No, I genuinely feel like I've sort of learned quite a lot tonight. Like in terms of like, I did not know that what I do is false chord, and what fry screaming was, and now it's starting to kind of make sense. Like the way you explained it earlier, and thinking about the way I used to scream and how I struggled to move between this high fry scream into the sort of false chord low scream that I used to do, and now I'm doing my basically low, mid, and high all in the same style of vocals that I'm now doing that I've always done my lows. So it kind of it made a lot of sense to me with the way you explained it, and yeah, I've learned a lot, man.
Hell yeah. Just watch. Somebody's going to send me an email and they'll have a link where you do something entirely different from what I said, and they'll be like, actually, no, but yeah, man, it's fun. It's fun to dissect. It's fun to see what's going on. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate the conversation. Well, let's go ahead. I'm sure anybody watching this video is going to be familiar with you and your band, but go ahead and plug yourself anyway. What should people be aware of? What things should people know? Where should they find you? What should they follow? All that sort of stuff.
I guess obviously the new album's out, and I guess the only really thing we're really trying to plug at the moment is our headline tour at the end of the year in December. It's a mainland Europe headline tour. It's selling really well, but there's still a few shows that are quite slow. So yeah, mainland Europe, December, Bleed From Within headline tour. It's the first time we've done a headline tour in Europe in almost 10 years.
Whoa.
So, and most of the festivals we've been playing we've obviously only been doing like 30, 40-minute sets. So if people want to come see us play for an hour 15, an hour 20, which sounds horrific to me, to be honest with you, because it's 17 shows with no days off and an hour and 15 each night. Yeah. I mean, I've done it before and I've never had any issues, but we will see.
It's a lot.
I'm a lot older than I was when I was doing that before. I'm 34 now, so.
Me too. I'm right there with you. Get that sleep. Drink that water.
Avoid. I feel good though. Like my voice feels like it's in its prime. So we'll see.
Hell yeah. Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And that's it. I mean, I definitely won't be there. But if y'all ever come from the old US of A, or maybe like next year, maybe next year when we're gonna have a kid here in just about a month, and so I'm kind of locked down for a while.
Congratulations, man! That's awesome.
Well, he's keeping me from going and seeing cool shows in Europe. So
yeah. That's the thing is we like States is like on all the streaming platforms. The States is our biggest market, and we've never toured the States yet.
Really? For some reason,
and we get messages. No, dude, we get messages non-stop every single day on all of our personal pages, on all the band pages. Like people pissed off that we've not been in the States. It's like, dude, it's not easy. But all I can say is, we will be in the States. I cannot say nothing more than that. But everyone that's been getting pissed, they can relax because.
Hell yeah! Well,
that's literally all I can say. But yeah, I'm excited.
come through Arizona, or at least California, Nevada, Utah, or New Mexico, something that at least borders me, and I'll come check it out. But yeah, man, thank you so much for coming on the channel. I really appreciate it. Great discussion, lots of fun. For the viewers out there, if you enjoyed it, like, share, subscribe, blah. I said it all at the beginning.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I think we're good. So as always, many thanks. Much love.
Dude, thanks so much for having me. I love your channel and I love what you're doing. Spreading the good word about the metal vocals. And yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was an honor.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And hopefully we'll talk again soon. Take care. Goodbye, everybody.